What's the story, Morning Glory? What is the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of The Real Housewives of New Jersey, Season 13, Episode 6, All Bets Are Off. Okay, so this is not going to be like a full-blown review. I just want to have a conversation about a couple of things about this show. First of all, this show has turned into Mean Girl City. This is the real lives of Mean Girls, because the only thing that I'm seeing here is this constant, we don't like her, so we don't want you to like her either. So we're going to do everything we can to make her feel bad, to push her out of our group, to ostracize her, to make everybody else hate her. And it's just like, what are we doing? Y'all are 40 something year old women. Some of y'all are closer to 50. Some of y'all are in your 50s, like Teresa. And here you are running this campaign against Margaret, absolutely hating on this woman. And not to say that Margaret is not innocent by any means. You know, Margaret has done her dirt. She is not 100% innocent at all. But you have this mouthpiece that goes by the name of Jennifer Aydin, who's running around trying to get everybody to hate Margaret overtly and covertly. And it's just stupid and childish. This is like an episode of, Beverly Hills 90210. You know what I mean? It's like you have these group of girls who don't like these other girls, and it's like, oh, we're gonna get the whole school to not be their friend, and we don't want them sitting at our lunch table. It's just stupid. Jennifer, you have 5 kids, okay, and a struggling marriage. You have nothing better to do than to call people up, trying to talk about Margaret and trying to get them and trying to turn them against Margaret. You have nothing else better to do with your time. Well, in this episode, she did exercise something very constructive, which was going to a marriage counselor. So everything in her life, everything that's wrong in Jennifer's life, she blames it on Margaret, which leads me to her marriage. So no one can say that it was a good thing for Margaret to reveal Nabil's affair on camera. Obviously, that Jennifer was completely blindsided. She didn't want her children to know about it. This was a very private matter. I mean, I don't know how private it could have been, because they must have told somebody for Margaret to know about it. Somebody else must have known about this affair besides Jennifer, Nabil, and the other woman, because Margaret knew about it. Unless the other woman was going around town talking about it. I don't know. So obviously, Margaret should not have done that. But if I'm going to play devil's advocate here, in a way, if Margaret exposing the affair is forcing Jennifer and Nabil to address this affair and to finally put it to bed, then in a way, maybe it was a good thing that the affair was exposed. Obviously, you don't want your young children to know about these things. But you're on a reality TV show. You're on a reality TV show. Your children are going to see you drunk out of your mind. They're going to see their parents falling over drunk at their friends' parties. They're going to see their parents arguing with each other. They're going to see their mother, getting into stupid confrontations with other people, calling people out of their name, cussing people out, hitting below the belt. They're going to see all of this. So Jennifer Aydin has no issue with her children seeing her drunk, seeing her arguing with people, seeing her pushing people around or getting pushed around. She has no issues with her children seeing that, but heaven forbid they should find out that their father cheated on their mother. That's like the worst thing possible. So I've always felt like part of Jennifer's hatred towards Margaret, besides Margaret exposing the affair, was the fact that Margaret, I think in Jennifer's eyes, is symbolic of Nabil's affair, because Margaret cheated on her husband, Jan, I think his name is. She cheated on Jan with Joe Bonino, and ended up being with Joe Bonino, and enjoys her life with Joe Bonino, fell in love with Joe Bonino. And the fact that this affair turned into a marriage, I think, is Jennifer's biggest fear, that this could have happened to her when Nabil was cheating on her, or it might happen to her in the future. That this is always going to be a possibility, because the idea of the husband never leaves the wife for the other woman, which I feel like if that was set in stone, maybe Jennifer really wouldn't care if Nabil cheated on her, as long as he came back home and took care of her and provided for her and her children. But because there's always that possibility that he could possibly leave her, because Margaret left Jan, that he could possibly leave her and be happier with someone else than he ever was with her. This is like maybe it's a constant fear for her. I don't know. I'm just speculating. So that's another driving force behind her hatred towards Margaret, is that Margaret symbolizes how an affair turns into a beautiful marriage, or an affair can turn into a happy marriage. And you leave your spouse behind, don't give them a second thought, and you moved on with the person that you cheated with, your co-adulterer. Okay, fine. So her and Nabil go to therapy. She drags Nabil to therapy. And she says that the only reason why Nabil even agreed to go to therapy is because, she guilted him into it, talking about how much it affected the children. And so, to me, her children act the way that they've always acted. Little Olivia, she's always the life of the party. She is still the life of the party. I don't know what goes on when the cameras are not there. Obviously, maybe her children are in deep depressions when the cameras are not there. But it looks like, her children are going on the way that they were before they knew about the affair. But I'm not saying that they were not affected, because obviously it did affect them. But I don't know if it completely tore their whole entire world apart. So she guilts him into going to therapy because she's telling Nabil how it's affecting the children, because Olivia had told Rachel at Danielle's daughter's birthday party, the pink party, she had told Rachel that when she grows up, she wants to be a love therapist or a love counselor. She wants to help people who are in relationships that are in crisis. So when Jennifer finds this out, when Rachel tells her this, she runs and she can't wait to tell Bill. You see how it's affecting your children. You see how your affair affected your children. You see how Margaret talking about your affair has affected our children. So he agrees to go to therapy. So they go to therapy, and I was just waiting to see how long is it going to take Jennifer Aiden to bring up Margaret Joseph. It didn't take too long at all. She did not name her, but she did refer to her. And so she talks about how Nabil had this affair, and when the affair happened, when she found out about it, it was kind of like, I guess there was a confrontation, and then it was over. And then she put it behind her, and she was just gonna move forward, keep her chin up, and just move forward with life, because she decided to stay with this man. She wasn't going to bring it up. She wasn't going to throw it back in his face. It happened. They argued about it or had a confrontation about it, and then just moved on, however many years ago. So now this woman, she referred to Margaret as this woman. So now this woman has brought up the affair again, and now she's forced to deal with it. So it starts off talking about the affair, but then it goes into parenting. They start talking about parenting, and Jennifer talks about how, Nabil is like a very absent parent. Nabil was telling the therapist that, she coddles the children. She spoils the children. She doesn't really give them any direction. And he says that his children need to be micromanaged. He wants his children, to be, to have more structure. And Jennifer jumps in and says, well, he wants me to do all of that. He's not going to do that. He wants me to do all of that. And then she talks about how Nabil works a lot. And Nabil said that his job is very, very stressful. It's the kind of job where you kind of mentally take it home with you. He's a plastic surgeon, I believe. So he talks about how stressful his job is, kind of to justify why he's not more involved with the family. And Jennifer says that he'll come home, and sometimes, he won't even eat dinner with them. Okay, when she talked about how he comes home and won't even eat dinner with his family, but instead will eat dinner by himself after everybody else has eaten, I was like, this man has checked out of this marriage. He has completely checked out of this marriage. Nabil seems like the kind of husband, because there are a lot of husbands who are like this, the silent types, where there's not a lot of conversation. There's not a lot of interaction with you. They give you the bare minimum. They barely give you a hello or a good morning. They're in their own world. They're always working. It's work, 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 work. When they come home, they're too tired to do anything. They try to work on the weekends. So when she was talking about how he comes home and then he'll go straight, I think she said into the pool, he'll go somewhere else in the house. He'll go somewhere else. And then after everybody else has eaten, then he'll come and he'll have his dinner by himself. I was like, oh my God. That's bad. That's extremely bad. And she puts up with it because she has to keep up appearances. She has to keep up this facade that her and her husband are like in this perfect marriage, and it's very loving, it's very caring. He's the best husband. He takes care of her, he provides, blah blah blah. But she's suffering in silence. She is suffering so much, and because she's so hurt by her marriage, she is acting out with other people because she cannot act out with Nabil. Nabil seems like the kind of person, because she talks about how he's very silent. His idea of a healthy marriage is not talking about issues, not addressing issues. She says that he's always silent. When she confronted him about the affair, he was silent. Whenever she confronts him about an issue, he's silent. He doesn't really talk much. He seems like the kind of person where he won't say anything. He'll keep quiet. But I bet the more you push him, the more you poke at him, he just suddenly erupts. He just suddenly erupts, and then he's gone. I think that's why she stays quiet. I think this is the reason why she stays quiet. When she does confront him, when she really, really corners him, it's on camera because he can't really react the way he wants to react on camera. This is just my assumption. I could be wrong. But I think in their real life, when there's no camera crew around, in their real life, she really doesn't confront him very much. I think she doesn't confront him at all, or she's very passive aggressive. Because if she confronts him head on and forces him to respond, his response is extreme. And then he's gone. He's out of there. And she doesn't want him to leave. So when I was listening to her talking to this therapist about her marital issues, and it's bad. It is really, really bad. Let me see here if I missed anything. So they start talking about the infidelity, turns into the parenting style that, they're very conflicted when it comes to how they raise their children. She says that he's an absent parent. He's not very hands-on. And Jen says that she never complains about anything because he's not going to do anything. He's not going to respond. It doesn't matter if she complains or she doesn't complain. I think she's going to get the same response from Nabil, whether she says anything or not. And his response is just going to be silence. She's in a very lonely marriage, very, very lonely marriage. And this is the reason why she's acting out like a child with everybody else. She's probably extremely jealous of Melissa because Melissa has the kind of husband who is all over her, can't get enough of her. Melissa and Joe are almost like, friends. Now, I've also noticed that whenever Nabil is in a social setting on the show, the first thing he tries to do, he tries to get drunk. Like he's just trying to escape. And like they're either drunk at a party or I don't know what's going on at home. I don't know. They're not talking to each other at home. There's not a lot of like interaction. And these Jersey women, they're very, 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 very loyal to their husbands, very loyal to their men. So as far as Jennifer Aiden, that's all I had to say. Her marriage is in serious crisis, very serious crisis. Nabil has completely checked out. She's basically like a single mom. And as long as she's living in this huge house and has all of these material things, she's not going to go anywhere. Because it's more important for her to keep up appearances than it is for her to have true happiness and to have like true love and to have the kind of man that will adore her and give her the attention that she needs. Let's talk about Dolores and Frank Catania. So Dolores is in this new relationship with Paul, and Paul is like a man's man, and he has boundaries, and he does not want Frank Catania to cross those boundaries. Whereas David, her previous boyfriend, who I always felt like David really wasn't into her that much because we hardly ever saw him. Okay, so he was a doctor. He was always busy. But when we did see him, I felt like it was very awkward between him and Dolores. I don't know what was going on with that guy, David. But David allowed Frank to be a part of their relationship. There were the three musketeers, the three of them, Dolores, Frank, and David. Well, now this new guy, Paul, he ain't about that life at all. He does not want Frank Catania anywhere near Dolores if he can help it. So Frank is struggling because he's used to being in Dolores's life. He's like, we're a package deal, me and Dolores and the kids. If you accept Dolores, you have to accept me. And Paul is like, I don't play those games. I need you to be away from my woman. And Frank, supposedly he's struggling with this. So when they go do the baseball game, when they go to the baseball game, he talks about basically the baseball game. Anytime he talks about Dolores, Frank is like on the verge of tears because he feels like he's lost her. And I understand that Dolores has been the one constant thing in his life, and that's his security blanket, and we get it. He did her wrong as a husband. He did her dirty as a husband. And, they're much better friends than they were spouses. And, she forgave and she moved on and she was always there for him. And now he feels like he's losing her. Frank, suck it up, Buttercup. In the words of Captain Lee, suck it up, Buttercup. You have to move on, Frank. You're a grown man. You can do this. Dolores is not forever out of your life, but she cannot be, your wife, non-wife. Okay, I don't know how he saw her, how he felt, what he thought the relationship was. I don't know if he kind of was like, well, I'm like he was still married to her in a way. I don't know, but you're gonna have to move on, Frank. You're gonna have to move on. And then when they were out at the, where were they? I think when they were at the batting cage. When they were at the batting cage and his girlfriend was there, and he was talking about Dolores and how much he misses her, and and he was like getting all choked up. And I'm thinking to myself, how does the girlfriend feel to hear her boyfriend, talk so lovingly and so deeply about his ex-wife Dolores? And I understand that the girlfriend understands what this dynamic with Dolores and Frank, that it's nothing romantic. Dolores is like Frank's emotional support, but still, I wonder how the girlfriend must feel to hear her boyfriend talk about Dolores like that. Maybe she's used to it. It's no big deal to her. But Frank, you're going to have to move on, sweetheart. I don't know what else to tell you. You're going to have to move on. Now let's talk about Danielle, one of the new cast members. So Danielle and Rachel both. So Danielle and Rachel were both bombarded in the last episode by Jennifer Aiden and Teresa. Basically, stay away from Margaret, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So they claim that, we don't need anybody to tell us who to hang out with, who to be friends with. We can make up our own minds. So Rachel, to me, seems to be leaning more towards Margaret's side because her and Jennifer Aiden got into it. So she seems to be leaning more towards Margaret's side. And Danielle seems to be leaning more towards Jennifer's side because of the fact that she sees herself having more in common with Teresa, because both her and Teresa have brothers that they don't speak to. Both her and Teresa have sister-in-laws that they don't like. And they have these really major family problems. So I can see Danielle floating more towards Jennifer Aiden and Teresa. The thing about Danielle is I don't think she's working with the full deck, because when she talked about how Margaret was telling Melissa Gorga that Melissa should leave Joe and that she can be with any baller, that she doesn't have to be with Joe. And this is when Melissa and Joe were going through their marital problems. Danielle was like, how can you tell a wife to leave her husband? How can you, break up a marriage like that? And I was like, okay, you're not working with the full deck. Margaret was not serious about Melissa leaving Joe Gorga. Melissa was feeling down in the dumps because, she feels like Joe did not appreciate her enough. And she was just talking crap about her husband. And then Margaret was just trying to make her feel better and be like, you know what, girl, you don't need him. You can move on from him. You can find somebody better. Get you a baller. You can get you a baller, whatever. That's all it was. For anybody to put so much weight on Margaret saying that, as if Margaret had this very deep, serious conversation about Melissa leaving Joe and trying to convince Melissa to leave Joe, that you're stupid if you think that that was a very serious conversation. It was just girlfriends talking crap, and she's just trying to make her friend feel better. So for Danielle to take that seriously, I'm like, hey, Danielle, I don't know about you, girl. Yeah, you're just trying to find an excuse to not like Margaret because you're very much team Jennifer and Teresa, which is fine. Just own it. You like Teresa, you like Margaret because, you like Teresa and you like Jennifer because you see more of yourself in those type of mean girls. I think that's about it. Dolores. Okay, so Margaret she was with her friend, Jennifer Fessler. And Fessler was telling Margaret, the way you acted with Jennifer at my house, when she had that event at her house, she was like, that's the Margaret that I've never seen before. I mean, you were really, I've never seen you like that before. You were really like, you were crazy. You were acting like a juvenile. Like, what was wrong with you? And so Margaret tried to explain, this is how, Jennifer does to me. This is what she does to me. Jennifer this and Jennifer that. And Fessler was like, it's not about Jennifer. It's not about Jennifer and what she does to you and what she does. It's about you, sweetheart. You. She was like, I can't have you act like that anymore. I cannot have you act out like that anymore. You need to have better control of yourself. And she does. Margaret allows Jennifer Aiden to get under her skin. She allows Jennifer to push all of those buttons, and she reacts. And Margaret is just going to have to learn to no longer react to Jennifer. And Jennifer knows it. Jennifer knows that she can push Margaret's buttons and Margaret will react. So Margaret needs to be smarter and realize that. And so Fessler was giving her very good advice by telling her, you need to do better when you're around her. You have to do better. Now let's talk about the rift between Joe and his sister Teresa. So at the baseball game, the families, Melissa and Joe, Teresa and Louie, the kids, they all greeted each other at Dolores's baseball charity event. They greeted each other when they saw each other. They were very cordial with one another. But Joe was like, I'm going to keep my distance. Okay. I'm not going to allow myself to fall into her trap thinking that everything is okay. And then she just turns around and stabs me in the back again. So I'm going to treat her very, very cautiously and keep her at arm's length. So the kids were like, getting along. There was a scene where Gia was calling her cousin Joey over, Joe and Melissa's son. And, they were talking with them and everything. And Gia was talking about how she hasn't seen her cousins in such a long time. And she feels like Melissa and Joe Gorga are keeping her cousins away from her. And so I think it was Teresa was telling her therapist earlier in the episode that she didn't grow up with her cousins because her father and his brother, or her father and his cousin, has some type of an issue. They had some type of a disagreement over $200, and they didn't speak to each other for years. And so she never grew up with her cousins, and she doesn't want that to happen with her kids. Excuse me. So. But Gia said that Melissa and Joe are keeping her cousins away from her. But then again, I also remember Antonia telling Melissa that when she's with her cousins, they don't talk about their parents' issues. Their parents' issues never come up. They just act like nothing's wrong when they're together. So I'm very confused about whether or not these cousins are spending time with each other or they're not, because Gia said that when her mom and her brother get into it, a wall goes up, which made me think a wall went up between the two families and she wasn't around her cousins. But then Antonia talks as if, there's nothing wrong with the kids getting along. So I'm very confused about that. I have no idea what's going on there. And who knows how things really are, because they may act one way in front of the camera and then act differently off camera. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's about it. So I just wanted to have a quick conversation about this week's episode 6. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. On your way out, don't forget to rate the video. If you like this content, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll definitely talk to you later. Bye.